What is going on, guys? Kingpin Light here. We got Rise and Fall of the Khmer Empire, History of Cambodia summarized. I wanted to take a closer look at the just learning more about Cambodia because you guys keep saying stuff in the comments. Teach me little tidbits here, but I just came to the realization I don't know that much about the history of that general area. So I figured let's watch this 10-minute video. It should summarize everything and kind of point me toward a direction to like look into stuff a little more. Also, look at this. It's been a while since I've worn this shirt. Uh, some of you guys back when I had like 300 subscribers might know that I bought this shirt for myself. It's not merch or anything. I'm not selling it, but I bought this shirt for myself. I just wanted to, I just felt like it one day. I woke up and I was like, you know what? I should put a logo on the shirt. Write little pink, you know what I mean? Also, forgive me for not looking the freshest right now. I actually found it in the back of my closet. I forgot I even had it. But anyway, guys. Oh, I haven't mentioned this recently, but the Discord. So I got a Discord where I'm most active on. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well, but I don't really talk on those very often. So if you guys ever want to suggest something to me directly or have like a conversation, Discord's going to be the place to do it, and that can be found in the description under my Drum.io page. That'll have a list of all of my links. And then of course, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Oh, and check out the original creator of this video. I always keep the original video links in the description. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that, but if you open up the description of a video, I have always put the original video. I just like, I figured I should put that out there. So if you guys want to see the original without me talking over it the entire time, especially with the music, it's always going to be there. So, oh, you know what? Before we dive into this, let me get me a White Claw. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. Mango, the best. Well, I don't know if it's the best flavor. Watermelon might be the best flavor, but anyway, I'm all set.
The fabulously wealthy and powerful Khmer Empire, also known as the Angkor Empire, was based out of the territory which is now modern-day Cambodia. The Khmer, correctly pronounced Khmer, or Khmer in English.
Khmer, Khmer, which is the one that I've been saying. I think you guys pointed me toward using that one, so that's the one I've been using. 17 million today. I'm not going to back up too much because it's a long video, but
correctly pronounced.
Let me go back just a little bit. So this is between 802 and 1431 AD, I'm assuming. And Angkor Empire. Is it Angkor? How do you say it?
Out of the territory which is now modern-day Cambodia. The Angkor Empire was the fabulously wealthy and powerful Khmer Empire, also known as the Angkor Empire, was based out of the territory which is now modern-day Cambodia. The Khmer, correctly pronounced Khmer, or Khmer in English, are an ancient people whose culture became heavily Indianized in the region's prehistory. The land they inhabited.
I don't think I mentioned this, but Cambodia's got one of the cooler flags because like every other country just has like the regular stripes. I mean, Mexico's kind of cool too. I can be on the same boat as you guys. We got an eagle. But is it an eagle? We have a bird. I think it's an eagle. Now I don't even know my own country's flag or my ancestors' country. But I was gonna say you guys have like an actual symbol, like a logo on a flag. And I've never understood why more countries don't do that. I mean, I guess it's easier to recognize if it's like three colors, like quick from a distance back in like warfare times, maybe like back when they waved flags during war or something. I don't know.
Lay at the midpoint of the maritime trade route between India and China. Over the centuries of contact with Indian merchants, both Hinduism and Buddhism became widespread throughout the whole of Southeast Asia and largely, but not completely, replaced the earlier shamanistic practices there. While Hinduism became the dominant religion of mainland Southeast Asia's ruling class, Buddhism generally became more popular with the common people. Additionally, Indian culture and language combined with the Khmer society, which developed into a unique cultural amalgamation. The first major state in the region was Funan, which was likely a loose confederation of city-states.
50 to 550 AD. So not only is it 500 years, which is commendable, but damn, that's early. It's the Funan Empire. All right.
Very little is known about the Funan, other than a few surviving inscriptions and a handful of mentions in Chinese records. According to the Chinese, one of the Funan's vassals was Chenla, a Khmer state. They overthrew the Funan and established themselves at the head of a new confederation of city-states.
Okay, so it was the Funan got overtaken by one of their city states, Shenla, in about 550 AD, with Lavo being the was it the Mon people? What is the Mon people? But either way, I don't know why I'm asking you guys. I'm sure it's gonna be covered here. That's well, they said there's not a lot of information on the Funan because I'm trying to look at like specific conflicts I could look into as well, but they probably won't have too much um, history on that particular takeover, I guess.
The Chenla Empire was prone to infighting and broke up into two competing factions the Chinese called the Land and the Water Chenla. Some modern scholars believe this is an overgeneralization.
That sounds cool as hell, man. Like breaking up your, I mean, not obviously what happened or anything. I don't know too much about it, but just the fact that they call one land or upper and water lower, that sounds really cool, actually. Um, that reminds me of some like Naruto or some what is the other one? Avatar. You know, the Last Airbender, where they just break their stuff up and call it different kind of districts.
And that the Chenla broke down into many more smaller factions that all competed and warred on each other. Whatever the case may be, the disunity among the Chenla, particularly the Water Chenla, made them easy prey. Pirates from the south took advantage of the situation and poured into the Mekong Delta, raiding, looting, and seizing control of cities. The two thalassocratic imperial powers of the south, the Shailendra dynasty of Java and the Srivijaya of Sumatra, both sought to impose their control over the Chenla. During this same period, it is believed the Cham people of the central south coast of what is now Vietnam also raided and occupied former Chenla territory. It was during this chaotic time that a minor lord began uniting the squabbling Khmer principalities under his authority. This enabled him to drive out all of the foreign invaders.
So actually, and I'm sure they're about to get into it with this first leader, but this reminds me a lot, or not reminds me, but it's comparable to like the Persians, you know what I mean, the Roman empires, all of these different like sections of the world, the Mongols specifically, where they had a bunch of warring tribes that kept getting kind of dominated, I believe, by China. And they had I mean they had different leaders, but really right, Genghis Khan came in and collected all the tribes, made them under one banner, and that's when they started taking over stuff. So this would kind of the same sort of story almost.
In the year 802, he was proclaimed a god king after an ancient Hindu ceremony was performed. Afterwards, all of the major and minor independent lords and chieftains fell in line and swore fealty to him. Although he was the first leader of a new empire, he took the name Jayavarman II. Jayavarman I had ruled more than a century beforehand, and was the last ruler of the unified Chenla Empire. The name...
That's actually cool. So it's not his dad or like his parent being Javarman the first, but he's taking it over to like a title almost.
Jayavarman harkened back to a more prosperous and powerful time, and the revival of past glory. Jayavarman II moved the capital city to a more defensible location in the north, further away from the open flatlands of the Mekong Delta. Jayavarman's successors expanded the kingdom to the north and west. They defeated and vassalized the predominantly Mon kingdoms of Lavo and Harapunchai after several campaigns. They also maintained hostile relations with the rapidly expanding Srivijayan Empire to their south. To combat the growing threat, the Khmer made an alliance with the Srivijayan's commercial competitor, the Chola dynasty of southern India. The Chola sent a massive fleet, which raided and plundered Srivijaya's major cities. After a peace treaty was negotiated, Srivijaya entered a long period of decline and infighting.
So I doubt that it's gonna cover this because it's more in-depth knowledge. But were the Khmer people during this time era, did they have any sort of naval fleet? I mean, not like full modern fleet, but like were they naval at all? Because it sounds like this Srivaya people were, like they said, pirates and that sort of thing. I'm assuming they were very water-based combat. And then it just said what was it, the Chola people were obviously very naval because they brought over entire warships, it looks like, to come over and fight on these islands. So I'm assuming, I don't know. This Khmer was more of a land combat thing.
Was negotiated. Srivijaya entered a long period of decline and infighting, which increased the Khmer Empire's commercial and political influence over the region. The Cham people of the Kingdom of Champa to the east were the empire's oldest foe, with whom they fought many wars, most of them being largely inconclusive. Usually Champa was victorious when they were invaded.
How in the world was Champa victorious with such a... They had a prosperous section, right? Always being near water. Hell, look at like Egypt, right? Being near a big river, big water is usually advantageous to the people, and that's usually where communities kind of thrive. But it just seems crazy that they had such a concentrated military power in that small section to be able to apparently be victorious most of this time.
And the Khmer were victorious when the Cham invaded them. There were a
Oh,
few
okay.
exceptions when one side would...
Well, that's warfare in general. Because they said when Champa was getting invaded, Champa usually came out better, and when Khmer were being invaded, they usually won. So that's usually how warfare is anyway. Defensive battle is a much easier battle to win than an offensive battle. Not only do you not know the territory as well, but actually like sieging and attacking places is a lot harder than just standing your ground. And that's hell, you can see that in modern times with like Ukraine, right? Ukraine's I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but Ukraine's military is much smaller than Russia's. And sure, there's a lot of other factors, but a big part of the reason I think that Russia is having such a hard time is they're fighting an offensive battle and Ukraine's having to do a defensive battle, right? And that's just regular kind of warfare tactics.
plunder a major enemy city and carry off some loot, declaring victory afterwards, but little territory changed hands. In a rare example of the two cooperating, they collaborated with the Chinese Song Dynasty Empire to invade Dai Viet. After the Dai Viet defeated the Chinese, they changed their mind about the whole invasion thing and withdrew their forces. Their friendship was short-lived, and they soon resumed unsuccessfully invading each other. One of the remarkable aspects of the Khmer Empire is that from the early years of its formation as an empire, it was constantly plagued by palace intrigue, civil wars, and internal rebellions, many of them successful. But in despite of all the internal conflict, the empire appears to have...
And this is up to 1431. Now, we'd like to think 400 years ago is a long time, but it's really not. Like let's say, and I'll be conservative. Let's say people only live 50 years on average between then and now. And now we live like 80 to 100 years if we're, with modern um, healthcare and everything. But let's say 50 years on average. That's only 8 generations away. You know what I mean? Like, time is just crazy because we think of these times as like, and even the 1800s, we think of them as like so long ago, and it's like what, 4 generations back? Like your great, potentially, right? Because people have kids at like 20, 30, so maybe it's a few more generations in there, but it's 4 sets of living humans if they lived up to 50, back to back, and I just think that's crazy.
had been well run, its population grew rapidly, and the land was usually exceptionally prosperous. As the nobility played the Game of Thrones with each other, the ministers, scholars, and priestly bureaucracy actually ran the country. Consequently, their power, wealth, and influence steadily increased over the centuries. In the late 11th and early 12th century, the empire went into a short period of decline, as the nobility waged war on each other in the Cham as they liked to do. The western vassals stopped paying tribute. Surya Varman II got the nobility in line and reunited the empire. During his long reign, he launched multiple failed
He took the same name as the other guy? You would have thought it would have been the third, but okay.
invasions of Dai Viet. He had successfully coerced the Champa into joining him on at least one of his invasions of Dai Viet. When they refused to join him on another invasion of Dai Viet, he invaded the Champa instead. And unlike the numerous invasions of his predecessors, this invasion was successful. He killed the Cham king, sacked the capital city, put his brother-in-law on the throne of Champa, and returned home to celebrate. The Cham immediately rebelled and executed his brother-in-law. He invaded Champa again.
Yeah, that's not good. I'm assuming they tried to change them over. I'm not gonna assume anything. It's more of a question. When the Khmer took over during this time period, were they invaders and they would conquer the people? They were conquerors, or were they would take over the place and allow them to keep their customs? Because that's sort of uh, history has shown that's usually more successful. Is taking over a place and saying, "All right, you keep doing what you do. You don't have to follow our religion or our culture or traditions or whatever. Do you, and you're just part of us now." And that's usually comes out with a better outcome.
Cham immediately rebelled and executed his brother-in-law. He invaded Champa again in a disastrous campaign where it is believed he died. Surya Varman II probably wanted to be remembered as the man who destroyed the Champa, but instead, he is known as the man who built Angkor Wat, the largest religious structure in the world, dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu. Throughout the history of the empire, the plain of Angkor hosted no fewer than 7 grand capital cities, each with a massive temple at the center. An intricately engineered network of canals used for irrigation and speedy travel connected all of these cities into one massive metropolitan zone. At its height, the combined super city is estimated to have had over 1 million inhabitants, making it the largest city in the world at the time.
Damn, it said London only had 50,000 people during that time, and they had 1 million. That's insane. And I do know about the Angkor Wat. I've said this a couple of times in the comments but I learned about that actually from Civilization, because you could that's one of the wonders that you could build. But I think I've probably had exposure to it like previously in my life, social, school or something like that. But interesting, I didn't know it was that. It came from this like huge, what they said, right? Metropolitan area almost. Metropolitan doesn't sound right. Is that what he said? Either way, this huge, vast connection of cities. That's crazy.
In the fascinating documentary Angkor, Twilight of Civilizations, available on this video sponsor, CuriosityStream, the details of Angkor's construction and its mysterious demise are examined. If you happen to be spending more time at home these days, a great way to invest your time is with Curiosity.
I'm gonna let his ad ride because he put the time into this video. I'm not gonna skip it.
A streaming service hosting thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles covering a wide variety of topics. The annual plan,
history, science, dinosaurs,
which is less than $20 for a whole year of unlimited access, is really good value. So go to curiositystream.com/epi. And
I do like learning.
Enter the promo code.
He might have sold me on this $20 for a year.
30 days membership for free. During the reign of Surya Varman II's successors, the country was plunged into civil war. This enabled the Champa to enact revenge on their old foe. They defeated the Khmer and took their capital city of Angkor. Angkor was taken by a daring surprise attack.
Well, damn. So they took over Champa. Brother got assassinated. They tried to fight back. They lost. Then they had civil war, and then Champa took over. Damn, these Champa people with such a little bit of land. Warriors, it looks like.
The Cham
goddamn
sailed a fleet up the Mekong River across the Tonle Sap Lake.
Okay, well, that would make sense that they're naval just because of how much coastline that they have, and their land is pretty much all coastline. My question still stands with the Khmer Empire, because I know they do have a lot of coasts. Obviously, they control that whole area, but they don't necessarily need to use it like Champa do to get around stuff. So they might not have had as advanced of a naval as other civilizations.
And up a smaller tributary river to the city. The empire appeared to be on the brink of a complete collapse when Jayavarman VII united the squabbling Khmer factions and drove out the Cham. He later counterattacked and conquered the Cham, making them a vassal state for a time. During Jayavarman's reign, the empire
for 30 years
drastically rebounded and experienced a short-lived golden age. His massive building program did not only include the typical temples and palaces, but over 100 hospitals were also built for the common people. Even though Jayavarman VII was a Buddhist, who widely promoted the religion throughout the empire, the Hindu priestly bureaucracy continued to increase.
Buddhism is not a religion, I'm pretty sure. That may be outdated. Maybe it's considered a religion, but I was taught that Buddhism is not a religion. It's a spirituality or something else, I forget. But because they're not supposed to worship Buddha, right? Like Buddha made it pretty clear. He's like, I'm not a god or an idol. I just want to show you guys the path to becoming enlightened. And so, because they don't worship Buddha, or they're not supposed to worship Buddha, from what my understanding, it's not technically considered a religion. I may be nitpicking though, or I may be wrong.
Increase their power. Receiving lavish gifts from the nobility, the Champa regained their independence shortly after Jayavarman's reign. In the west, the Thai, a people who had previously migrated from the north, overthrew the Lavo, vassals of the Khmer, and established their own kingdom of Sukhothai. Shortly afterwards, a second hostile Thai state formed in the north, Lena. 3 years later, in 1292, the Mongols
God damn, there was a lot of fighting there in this area. It must have been really prosperous, like a really fertile land or something, to have such infighting. Um, and the Mongols just came in, which I did not know came down this far. And I'm trying to remember my understanding of Mongol history because I don't recall their entire empire's map. I didn't know they came down this far.
formed in the north, Lena. 3 years later, in 1292, the Mongols invaded. After some moderate-scale border clashes, the Khmer decided to give them some gold, and they went away. In 13...
From what I know about Mongol history, that was a good call. Because I forget when he reigned, Genghis Khan, and then his following, their following leader as well. But those dudes knew how to fight. They kept beating like everybody
50, power in Sukhothai
for a
was
while.
usurped by the powerful city of Ayutthaya. Its first king married the Khmer emperor's daughter in the hopes of forming an alliance, which soon fell apart. Ayutthaya then launched a failed invasion of Angkor. The empire was too weak to hold on to the north. Consequently, the independent allied Lao kingdom of Lanzang was established as a buffer against attacks from the north. Lanzang had better success in halting Thai expansion and defeated them several times. During the last century of the Angkor Empire's existence, building projects ceased, and there are no surviving historical records from this period. The last two written mentions of their kingdom was in 1393. The Thai of Ayutthaya launched a successful campaign against the Khmer, and again in 1431. Sometime shortly afterwards, the city was abandoned and reclaimed by the jungle. Up until recently, it was thought that the Thai campaign of 1431 sacked the city, causing its abandonment. Archaeologists at the site have determined that there is no conclusive evidence of such an event having taken place.
It's wild that we had an age of conquests, right? Because nowadays the maps are, well, again, unless Putin has something to say to it right now, but the map usually has pretty steady outlines right now, right? Like just things change here and there, but for the most part, they're staying, at least for the last couple hundred years. Um, that may be too much. Maybe I'm again looking at it too zoomed in. It feels that way. It feels like everything, there is no more real conquests left, outside of, the world wars, and that caused an entire world to be like, we're not changing. But it's crazy that we had this long history, super long history of all of these civilizations rising and falling, fighting, taking over land, and just in this period of, 20, 30 years, they would take over Champa, control it, and then it came back, right? And there's just one example. It's just wild thinking of how different things were.
Increasingly, environmental factors such as widespread deforestation, soil erosion, and particularly severe monsoon seasons are believed to have likely played an influential, if not dominant, role in the abandonment of the city. The last Khmer emperor was also the first king of Cambodia. He led a demoralized band of refugees from a once mighty capital city to begin building a new capital city, only to have it destroyed by floods 3 years after its construction began. Envoys were sent to the Chinese.
Okay, so as soon as the Khmer Empire fell, or disbanded almost, the Kingdom of Cambodia started. I think there was maybe a 20-year overlap, it looked like. Or maybe I'm remembering the date wrong. I think it was up to like 1455, wasn't it? Or maybe that's what I want to say I remember. But okay, so it kind of changed names throughout that time.
Ming Emperor requesting aid, but none was received. The Kingdom of Cambodia was a diminished remnant of its former self, but it survived. Its monarchy survived many invasions and occupations, until 1970, when the monarchy was overthrown by the military.
Oh, hold on. That's a whole lot of information there. The Kingdom of Cambodia up to 1863. Again, not that long ago. Then the Kingdom of Cambodia French Protectorate, which I'm assuming is a sovereign state of France for a while, up till the 53, which again is super not long ago. And then the Japanese occupied between 41 and 45. And Japan, yeah, that was a time for Japan.
Until 1970, when the monarchy was overthrown by the military. A long, tragic, and violent period ensued, where a large portion of the country was slaughtered. After transitioning through many different governments, a constitutional monarchy was re-established in 1993. This has been Epimetheus. Thank you so much for watching.
Okay, so that was a really condensed version of the history, but that's wild. In a way they explained it, because Pot Paul, right? Which you guys have mentioned a lot of tidbits about them destroying art and everything. So that happened with the military overthrowing the monarchy. Then what is the I don't know how I haven't come across this or even asked this yet, but what is the government right now for Cambodia? Um, I am curious about that. It seems like they were a monarchy up until what, 53, 52. So I'm curious what they are now, what you guys are now. But that was interesting. That was a lot of information to take in. But it was good. I like the way he did it, where he showed the maps changing as time progressed, and he showed a lot of how uh, the map was, the kingdom size and everything was changing, and the conflicts they had. And I think it has a lot of shoot off points for me to look deeper into some of the conflicts, as far as, or at least the ones that they have information on. So yeah, that was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed that as well. If you like that, like, subscribe, and comment. I don't see myself doing a whole bunch of these sort of videos. This was just something I wanted to get some background info on, since I've recently been doing a lot of Cambodian reactions. And so definitely a learning experience. And you guys let me know other information they may have missed. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but maybe on the overall history kind of pertaining to the video's topic. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.